recreation of everything that was good and terrible about 80s action cinema. Keep in mind the "and terrible" part. Um, because, yeah, I mean, trying to analyze this movie on really any level at all, just like going into this movie with an analytical frame of mind, it's just absolutely ridiculous and crazy, and you shouldn't do it. Because you're just going to be miserable. Just sitting there trying to make sense of this crazy action, well, not really crazy, but this just horribly dumb action movie that's unfolding before your eyes. However, if you just go in wanting to see kind of these badass personalities just all sitting together, I think it's kind of effective. And I think one of the best things about the film is, even though it's quite short, it's only 90 minutes, it does a pretty good job of giving every one of its stars kind of ample screen presence and ample time to kind of, do their thing. I mean, like, there's really not a single character that either doesn't get a cool action scene or just, a cool bit of dialogue. And I know that you may disagree with me on that, Ryan, but I really think that's kind of what saves the Expendables. And I mean, I do think the action was a lot of fun. I mean, yeah, there are really only two big action scenes in the movie, but the action scenes that are there are just pretty damn awesome, especially the last 30 minutes. That was just like some truly inspired, just action movie carnage for me. However, this movie does have problems up the ass. Like Ryan said, the story is absolutely atrocious, some of the dialogue is just ass, and a lot of the characters' motivations are really questionable and just make absolutely no sense at all. And yeah, I mean, I think you kind of get the point of this. Really, it's a fun movie, but it's really nothing amazing, and it's not anything special, but I did really enjoy it, just on the merits that it kind of set up for itself. So yeah.
So yeah. That's our fairly brief review of the Expendables. But now we move on to our not-so-brief review of the incredibly awesome movie.
Spoiler alert!
Is Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Oh, yeah!
Okay, Will and I have agreed to let him kind of talk about this movie first. I don't really know why, but he's like, please, man, please.
That's mean. Just because I'm half Korean doesn't mean you have to get all racist on my ass.
Just because I'm like a third Hawaiian doesn't mean you have to get all sensitive on my butthole.
Touche. Okay, well, anyway, let me start off by talking about the epic badassery thing that kicks the shit out of the Expendables, which is Scott Pilgrim vs. El Mundo. Okay, can I first say that this is one of my favorite movies of all time, and is it one of my favorite movies, like, on my top 50 of all time? Yes, it's up there. I've seen this movie 6 times in theaters now, which is kind of a record for me. Like, it's the most times I've seen any movie in theaters, let alone in just a 5-day span. And I'm seeing this movie for a 7th time tomorrow, and I'm just not stopping with this movie because it is freaking incredible. And okay, you guys get that I'm like the biggest fan of this movie ever. Well, not ever, but I'm a freaking gigantic fan of this movie. And let me just dive into why. I mean, just Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is just such a sensational, phenomenal film for me. It just works on so many levels. I mean, it has kind of the visual, frenetic energy of video games, comic books, and anime, things that are obviously being paid tribute to in this film. Also, Edgar Wright brings his fantastic comedic sensibilities to the movie, and I think the result being some really, truly hilarious moments. I mean, this film definitely works as a comedy. And also, this movie works as a kind of contemporary, and I mean this in a good way, breezy romantic comedy between Scott Pilgrim and Ramona Flowers. But I think Scott Pilgrim vs. the World's overall brilliance comes from how just well Wright captures the zeitgeist of a certain culture, which, as you can see from this film, he really truly adores. And that's kind of what the character Scott Pilgrim is all about. I mean, he's pretty much the embodiment of everything Edgar Wright is trying to both lampoon and cherish about this culture. You know, from his armbands to his novelty ringer t-shirts to his just kind of pragmatic attitude toward like the crazy fucked up situations he's faced with in this film, and his just awesome adventures through this really fast-paced, unrelentingly wonderful film just kind of reflects that in the most bare-bones creative way possible. So yeah, bravo, Edgar Wright. I just want to have sex with this film. Seriously, it's a work of art for me, and I know I really can't argue with someone who thinks this movie isn't perfect. However, for me, this movie just kind of clicked. It it just filled in the gap. It just was perfect. Like everything I wanted out of a Scott Pilgrim vs. the World movie, or just a movie from Edgar Wright, is just so there. And I just cannot stress how much I freaking adore this film. Yeah, Ryan, go.
Okay, let me just start off by saying I kind of sort of agree with just about everything that Will has been saying here. Aside from it being one of my favorite movies of all time, I have seen it 2 times. I intend on seeing it many times more, but I'm not quite there yet. That said, I feel as if I love this movie just as much as you do. I mean, I think this movie. I mean, this movie just clicked with me on like a bajillion number of levels. I mean, number one being the aesthetics, meaning the kind of the concept of it paying tribute to kind of old 1980s video games, and then kind of anime, and a little bit of comic books, and then just kind of like conventions of just like almost every popular art form you can imagine. I mean, it kind of lampooning and then kind of paying tribute to that. That kind of clicked with me on that. That just definitely clicked with me. But I mean, like the action. I mean, just like every freaking thing about this movie is wow. I mean, this movie is absolutely hilarious. I mean, the comic timing is absolutely ridiculous in this movie. It is like if you think that like Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, which are Edgar Wright's previous efforts as a director, if you think those were manic, you have seen just like absolutely like in this movie, I wouldn't hesitate to call it like spastic. It's crazy.
Spastic
Like,
in the best way possible, that is.
yeah, absolutely. It's like it's kind of like the equivalent of like it's like we all kind of have that friend who's like a massive spaz and kind of tells us every joke that comes to mind for him. And for me, this movie is kind of the equivalent of that friend, and just about every joke that this friend or this movie tells works. I don't really know what further I can say. Not to mention, I actually really, and I know I'm kind of in the minority when I say this, I really liked like the whole romantic aspect of this movie. Like, I know a lot of people kind of, or voice crack.
No, I don't think you're in the minority when you say that you really dug the romantic aspects of this film. I just think you're in the minority when you say that your favorite part of the movie was the emotional arcs.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I can't really identify like a favorite part of this movie. I mean, there's just like so many memorable kind of scenes and set pieces and just like things about this movie. I mean, I can approach this movie from almost any level, like in terms of like any genre, and then walk away like supremely satisfied. Like if I was just looking for a romance, I'd be satisfied. If I was looking for a comedy, I'd absolutely be satisfied. If I was looking for an action movie, this movie is fantastic action, so that would work too. It's just like if I was this movie is just like a huge kind of a big like melting pot of like so many different genres and just so many different ideas and kind of like art forms.
Oh yeah.
I just think kind of totally worked.
Yeah, and can I just say that as an action movie, this movie works so damn well, not only because the action, like Ryan said, is fantastic, but because this movie keeps one-upping itself. Like, you're there watching an action scene, and then it's like, okay, this is so freaking awesome, there's no way Edgar Wright could top this. And then in the next scene, he just does top it, and then you're like, holy crap, if I was not sitting in a theater right now, I would no longer be wearing pants. You know?
I wouldn't go so far, but anyway, continue.
Yeah, and I think also, I mean, something that I have not felt in a theater for a very long time is just when you're watching an action scene, the action scene is just so damn well done. It's just so well shot, so well edited, just so perfectly paced and timed that you get so caught up in excitement and you just get so overwhelmed with just pure invigoration that you can just scream out, "Oh my god, this is so fucking awesome!" And I really had that feeling numerous times in this film. This movie is just it promises things, and then it just totally delivers on everything. This film is a freaking masterpiece to me, and it's one that I am going to rewatch, and I know I'm going to be rewatching and loving and cherishing 20 years from now, when I'm all grown up and big. Yeah.